The name's Dan. I've been a paramedic for 20 years. 20 years of scraped up kids, ODs in gas station bathrooms, heart attacks in crowded shopping malls, and the mangled aftermath of head-on collisions on icy highways. I've seen things that would make most people vomit. I've held a man's intestines in my hands while waiting for the fire department to cut him out of a wreck. I've performed CPR on a 6-month-old baby, feeling her tiny ribs crack under my palms, begging a God I don't believe in to let her breathe. I thought I'd seen it all. I really did. There's a certain level of detachment you have to achieve to do this job for 2 decades. You build a wall, you compartmentalize the screams, the blood, the grief. You put them in a box, you lock it, and you don't look inside. You have to. If you don't, you drown. Tonight, that box shattered. The wall came down, and I don't think I'll ever be able to rebuild it. The shift started like any other Tuesday. Rain hammering against the windshield of the rig, the kind of miserable, bone-chilling drizzle that seeps into your soul. My partner, Chloe, was scrolling through her phone, probably texting her fiancé. She's young, still has that bright-eyed, I'm here to save the world look. She's a good medic, smart and quick on her feet, but she hasn't been doing this long enough to have the light in her eyes extinguished. I envied her for that. We were parked behind a 24-hour diner, nursing lukewarm coffees, the radio crackling with the usual litany of city life gone wrong. Domestic disturbance on Elm Street, intoxicated male at the bus depot, all the classics. It was just after 2 a.m. when the call came in. The voice from dispatch was tinny, business as usual, but the details were sparse. Medic 12, respond to a wellness check, 418 Blackwood Road. Possible fall, unresponsive male. Caller was a third party, disconnected before providing more. Medic 12 responding. I grunted into the mic. Chloe looked up from her phone, a slight frown on her face. Blackwood Road? That's way out past the old quarry, isn't it? She was right. It was BFE. The kind of place people build houses when they really, really don't want neighbors. The GPS in the ambulance agreed, painting a route that snaked out of the city lights and into the rural darkness. The rain intensified, drumming a frantic rhythm on the roof. The wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. Third-party caller disconnects. Sounds fishy, Chloe mused, stowing her phone. Probably a prank, I said, but a weird knot was already tightening in my gut. Or a neighbor heard a thump and is too scared to check themselves. We'll be in and out. I wish I'd been right. God, I wish it had been a prank. The paved road gave way to gravel about 10 minutes out. The ambulance bounced and jostled, our equipment clattering in the back. The last mile was a muddy, rutted track that was more of a suggestion of a road than an actual one. Trees crowded in on both sides, their branches like skeletal fingers scraping against the sides of the rig. It felt like we were driving down a throat. Finally, the track opened into a clearing, and there was the house, 418 Blackwood Road. My first thought was that we had the wrong address. The place was a ruin. It was an old 2-story farmhouse, the kind that might have been charming a century ago. Now, the paint was all but gone, the wood beneath warped and grey. Several windows were boarded up. The porch roof sagged precariously, looking like a strong gust of wind would bring it crashing down. No lights were on, no cars were in the overgrown driveway. It looked like it had been abandoned for 50 years. No way anyone lives here, Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain and the rumbling engine. Protocol is protocol, I said, my own voice lacking its usual confidence. We check. grabbed the bags. We pulled on our gloves and jackets, the rain instantly soaking us as we stepped out. The air was thick and heavy, not just with moisture, but with a smell. It was cloyingly sweet, like rotting meat left out in the sun, but with a sharp, coppery undertone of old blood. It was a familiar smell, but amplified, twisted. My stomach churned. We grabbed the primary response bag and the cardiac monitor, our flashlights cutting bright, nervous beams through the oppressive dark. The front door was at the top of a short flight of rickety wooden steps. As we got closer, I saw that it was slightly ajar, hanging crookedly on one hinge. "County Sheriff, paramedics," I yelled, my voice sounding small and swallowed by the vast, wet darkness. "Anyone home?" Only the sound of the rain answered. I pushed the door open. It groaned in protest, the sound echoing into the house. The smell inside was 10 times worse. It hit me like a physical blow, a nauseating wave of decay and that same strange, metallic sweetness. It was the smell of a slaughterhouse that had been left to fester. Chloe gagged, pulling the collar of her jacket over her nose. "Dan, this is a scene. We should wait for PD." "We're already here," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. The call was for an unresponsive male. We have a duty to act. We just need to find him. My flashlight beam danced across the entryway. The inside was even worse than the outside. Plaster was crumbling from the walls, revealing the lath beneath. The floor was covered in a thick layer of dust and filth, but there were strange clearings in it. Odd, sweeping patterns in the grime, almost like someone had been dragging something heavy in circles. And on the walls, there were symbols, scrawled in what looked like mud or maybe dried blood. They weren't letters or numbers. They were complex, geometric shapes, spirals and jagged lines that seemed to twist and writhe in the dancing light of our flashlights. Then we heard it, a sound from upstairs. It was a soft, rhythmic sound, a wet, tearing noise, followed by a thick, syrupy drip, drip, drip. It was the kind of sound that bypasses your ears and sinks straight into your spine. It was a sound of consumption. "What was that?" Chloe hissed, her hand gripping my arm. "I don't know," I whispered back. My heart was a jackhammer against my ribs. 20 years, and I'd never felt fear like this. This wasn't the adrenaline of a crisis. This was a primal, gut-wrenching terror. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around, to run, to get back in the ambulance and drive until the sun came up. But the call was for an unresponsive male, and that sound was coming from inside. "Stay behind me," I said, my voice a dry rasp. We moved towards the staircase at the back of the hall. It was a grand, sweeping thing once, but now the wood was splintered and dark with stains. As we got closer, I saw him, the source of the call. He was at the bottom of the stairs, crumpled in a way that defied anatomy. It was a man, maybe in his 50s, dressed in worn jeans and a flannel shirt. His neck was bent at a 90-degree angle, his eyes wide and staring at the ceiling with an expression of pure, frozen agony. His limbs were a jumble of wrong angles, bones clearly snapped and protruding from his skin. It was a nasty fall, one of the worst I'd seen. But that wasn't what made me freeze. His chest, his entire ribcage had been torn open. It wasn't a clean cut from a weapon. It was ripped, splayed open like a butchered animal. The ribs snapped and bent outwards. The organs within were gone. The cavity was just a hollow, cavernous space, glistening wetly in my flashlight beam. Chloe let out a strangled sob and stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth, I felt the bile rise in my own throat. This wasn't a fall. This was a feeding, and the rhythmic, wet tearing sound from upstairs continued, uninterrupted. Tear, drip, drip. My training, my experience, my 2 decades of carefully constructed sanity. It all told me to back out, call for backup, and let the cops with guns handle whatever was up there. But something else, something I can't explain, pushed me forward. I had to see. I had to know what could do this to a person. "Dan, no. Don't go up there," Chloe begged, her voice a terrified whisper. I didn't listen. I put one foot on the first step, my boots sticking to something tacky and dark. I ascended slowly, my light beam preceding me. The smell grew stronger with every step, so thick I could taste it on the back of my tongue. The symbols on the walls became more frantic, more dense, a chaotic tapestry of madness. I reached the top of the stairs. The sound was coming from the last room at the end of the hall. The door was ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning me forward. The wet tearing stopped. Silence. The silence was worse. It was a listening silence, a waiting silence. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight steady. I took a deep breath, the foul air burning my lungs, and I pushed the door open. The room was the heart of the nightmare. The symbols covered every inch of the walls, the floor, even the ceiling. They pulsed in the beam of my light, seeming to shift and move. The floor was slick with blood and other fluids I couldn't identify. In the center of the room, there was a pile of what looked like animal carcasses. Deer, raccoons, dogs. All of them ripped apart in the same brutal fashion as the man downstairs. And standing over the pile was the patient. At first, my brain refused to process it. It tried to categorize it, to fit it into a box. Man, woman, animal. It failed. Because what I was looking at was none of those things, and all of them. It had the basic shape of a human being, but it was grotesquely, impossibly elongated. It must have been 7, maybe 8 feet tall, but it was hunched over. Its spine curved into a sickening arc. Its limbs were long and spindly, like the legs of a spider, with joints that bent in ways that made my own bones ache in sympathy. The skin was the color of old parchment, stretched so tight over its frame that you could see the dark, pulsing veins beneath. It was hairless, sexless, a canvas of pure biological horror. It was holding the half-eaten carcass of a large dog, and its head was buried in the animal's entrails. As I watched, its head snapped up, the sound of vertebrae cracking echoing in the dead air, and it looked at me. Its face, Christ, its face. There was a mouth, a ragged slit that stretched almost from ear to ear, filled with needle-like teeth. There was a suggestion of a nose, just 2 small, dark slits. But the eyes, there were no eyes. Just smooth, pale skin where eyes should be. Yet I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the marrow, that it could see me perfectly. It dropped the dog carcass with a wet slap. It opened its mouth, and a sound came out. Not a scream or a roar. It was a series of clicks, like a Geiger counter going haywire, mixed with a low, wet, gurgling sound from deep within its chest. It was the sound of something trying to mimic speech, but failing horribly. Then it started to move towards me. It didn't walk. It didn't run. It unfolded. Its long, thin limbs straightened with a series of sickening pops and cracks. It scuttled, its body moving with the twitching, disjointed grace of a broken puppet. Its feet, long and flat with toes that ended in yellowed talons, scraped against the wooden floorboards. Its fingers, equally long and tipped with what looked like sharpened bone, twitched and flexed. My mind finally rebooted. The paramedic, the professional, was gone. All that was left was prey. I screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a raw, animal sound of pure terror. I scrambled backwards, tripping over my own feet, and fell hard onto the landing. "Chloe, run!" I shrieked. "Get out of the house now!" The thing was in the doorway now, its tall, skeletal frame filling the entire space. It had to duck its head to get through, its neck bending at an impossible angle. It paused, its eyeless face tilting as if it were curious, the clicking sound growing faster, more excited. Chloe's scream from downstairs broke my paralysis. I scrambled to my feet and threw myself down the stairs, not even using the steps, just sliding and tumbling down in a controlled fall, my bag and monitor clattering behind me. I landed in a heap next to the disemboweled man, the sight of him jolting another shock through my system. I could hear it coming down the stairs behind me, the scraping of its talons on the wood, the wet clicking in its throat. Scrape, click, scrape, click. It wasn't rushing. It was methodical, relentless. It knew we couldn't get away. I grabbed Chloe, who was frozen by the front door, her face a mask of white, silent horror. I shoved her out into the rain and stumbled after her, my legs feeling like lead. We splashed through the mud, the cold rain feeling like a baptism, a desperate attempt to wash away the filth of that house. We didn't stop until we were inside the ambulance. The doors slammed and locked. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so violently it took me 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. I threw the rig into reverse and stomped on the gas, not caring about the ruts or the mud. As we fishtailed back onto the main track, the headlights swept across the front of the house. And it was there. It was standing in the doorway, a tall, impossibly thin silhouette against the blackness of the house. It wasn't pursuing us. It was just watching. Its head was tilted to one side, a gesture of silent, ancient curiosity. For a split second, I could have sworn the 2 smooth patches of skin on its face glowed with a faint phosphorescent light. Then it was gone, swallowed by the darkness as I spun the wheel and sped away. We didn't stop driving until we hit the streetlights of the city. We didn't say a word. The only sounds were Chloe's ragged sobs and the frantic rhythm of the windshield wipers. I got on the radio. My voice was a wreck. Medic 12 to dispatch. Go ahead 12. I tried to form the words. What could I say? Dispatch, we need police at 418 Blackwood Road. It's a crime scene. We have 1 DOA, apparent homicide. Copy that, 12. Is the scene secure? I looked at Chloe, who was staring blankly out the window, her face streaked with tears and rain. I thought of that thing, standing in the doorway, watching us go. No, I choked out. No, the scene is not secure, tell them. Tell them the assailant may still be on scene. And he is not. I couldn't say it. I couldn't tell them what I saw. They would have thought I was insane, on drugs. He is extremely dangerous. The aftermath was a blur of police reports, interviews, and mandatory counseling sessions. The official story became that we had stumbled upon a ritualistic killing perpetrated by a person or persons unknown. The cops who cleared the house reported finding the first victim at the base of the stairs, and the animal remains upstairs. They found the strange symbols, but they found no one else. No tracks leading away from the house, except for ours and the first victims. No fingerprints, no DNA that didn't belong to the dead man or the animals. The assailant, they concluded, had somehow fled the scene without a trace. The house was condemned, boarded up, and wrapped in yellow tape. A place of local legend now, another ghost story for bored teenagers. Chloe quit a week later. She came to my house, handed me her resignation letter to give to our supervisor, and just said, "I can't." I saw in her eyes the same thing I saw in my own reflection. The light was gone. I tried to go back to work. I lasted 2 shifts. Every dark house, every strange noise, every wellness check sent my heart into overdrive. I'd see that tall, spindly shape in the shadows. I'd hear that wet clicking in the silence between radio calls. I see its eyeless face every time I close my eyes. I'm on permanent leave now, probably fired soon. I don't care. I sit here, in my quiet suburban house, with every light on, and I write this, because the police report is a lie. The news stories are a lie. What I saw wasn't a man. It wasn't a killer hopped up on PCP. I've spent weeks digging through old town records, online archives, anything I could find about Blackwood Road. The stories go back centuries. People disappearing, livestock found mutilated in the same way as the man in that house. Local indigenous tribes had a name for the area, a name that roughly translates to the place where the hunger walks. It was ancient, it was a predator, and we walked right into its den. The thing that haunts me most, the question that keeps me awake night after night, staring at the ceiling, is this: why did it let us go? It was faster than us, stronger. It had us cornered. It could have torn us apart just like it did that man. But it just stood there and watched. And I have this cold, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that it didn't let us go out of mercy. It let us go because a predator doesn't always eat right away. Sometimes it follows the scent. Sometimes it's patient. It knows the fear makes the meat taste sweeter. It knows my scent now. It knows Chloe's. It saw us. And something that old, something that hungry. I don't think it ever forgets. Every creak of my house at night, every shadow that moves just outside my window, I think it's come for me. The terror of that night isn't over. I don't think it ever will be. It's just waiting, and it's hungry.